Hey, everybody, welcome. Your saltwater guide, Captain Dave Hansen, and it is Tuesday, the 17th of September. And we only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We only have 11 days left till the opening day of lobster season, gang. I hope you're all ready. I want to thank Promar Ahi for supporting us for so long. We've been with Promar since Kelly caught that world record lobster, and we're going to keep working together for a very long time. And I want to thank everybody over at Promar for being there for us and making sure that we're totally taken care of. All of our guides and everybody, we're ready for lobster season. And I want you all to understand, we talked about it a little bit last week on the show. We're going to talk about it a little more this week. How important it is to make sure that you do this lobster fishing proper. So we're going to go over a few things that I think you need to know to be successful when you go lobster fishing, gang. This is a quick show today, 15 minutes. Kelly Girl and I are up in Alaska right now. We're flying home tomorrow, the 18th. We'll be doing our show live on the 19th here in our studio. Kelly Girl will have a lot to tell you about our trip to Alaska. But today is Promar Ahi USA Tuesday. We always talk about Promar products on Tuesdays, and Mondays, and Tuesdays. And I don't want you to miss out on the phenomenal 10% off that they're having right now to get all your gear ready. If you watched the show last week, you know I talked all about the proper gear you need to have. So we'll leave the QR code up there why I'm talking to you today about the proper way to hoop net. These are the things that I do that have made me very successful in hoop netting. And these are the things that I've taught all my clients and members to do. So pay attention. This could change how you go about hooping. First of all, you need to have a lot of spots. Hoop netting has gotten so popular that even the spots that you think are yours that nobody knows, you're going to get out there and find out that there's already people on them, especially if you don't get out there early enough. So have a plethora of spots for one. How can you do that? Well, you know me, I got all the spots for you over at your saltwater guide. But those of you that aren't members or don't want to have a little bit of help and know exactly where to go, I understand. So make sure you have more than one or two spots that you can go to all the time, because lo and behold, somebody will be on your quote unquote spot when you get there. So you might want to have more than just one or two spots. All right. Second of all, you got to make sure you get out there a half an hour, at least a half an hour before it gets dark. I like to get out there an hour before it gets dark, but at the worst case scenario, a half an hour. A lot of us have that job thing, so it gets in the way of what time we're going to be able to get out there. But the season starts on the 29th at 6 o'clock at night, which is a very strange time. And I can't get any confirmation on if it's going to be, you can pull your hoop nets at 6 o'clock or you can throw them in the water at 6 o'clock. There was no verification. So I believe in my heart, this is what I think how the law reads, is you can throw your hoop nets in the water, but you can't start pulling them till 6. That would make sense to me, but then again, remember, the Fish and Wildlife makes no sense at all in their regulations. So I don't know. We'll find out. I guess it'll all be revealed to us on the 29th. Make sure you have your lobster card. Make sure you have it all filled out. You know what area you're going to fish in. You know what kind of hoop net you're using. The only part of it you can't fill out is how many you've taken. But before you throw your first net in the water, that lobster card better be filled out. Every blank, every little square better have some number in it, except for what you're going to take at the end of the night. That's the only time you can fill that out at the end, is how many you've taken. But you better have everything filled out before you throw your first hoop in the water, because that is a ticket. And a lot of people got that ticket last year. I don't want to see any of my followers or members get that ticket. So make sure you have your lobster card filled out before you throw your first hoop net in the water. So now we're out there. We want to get out there at half an hour at least before it gets dark. I prefer an hour. Why? because these animals are nocturnal. So they don't like to come out until it gets dark. Then they feel comfortable. When it's dark and the water's super dirty, that's when they really feel comfortable and they really move around a lot. When it's dark and the water's crystal clear, they're not going to move as much as they normally would. Big storms, lots of rain, big swell, all those things are very beneficial to us as lobster fishermen. All those things matter. And like I talk about on the game plans every Thursday, rain is our friend when it's hoop net time. The more it rains, the better hooping is. That being said, it still can be very, very good when it's not raining. So the best time to go is when you can go. But the times I'm telling you about, an hour before the sun goes down, all that, it all matters. The next thing to try to remember is, as soon as that sun goes under the water, as soon as the sun sets on the horizon, now it's dark on the bottom of the ocean. Now those lobsters are going to start moving. So if you get your hoop net in the water a half an hour to an hour before the sun goes down, now you're going to start pulling your hoop nets a half an hour after the sun goes under the water. Now, it might not be completely dark where you are at, but it's dark on the bottom. So if they're crawling, they're already starting to crawl. Here's how I approach it. This is how I've been doing it since 2005. When I first did my very first taking someone out hoop netting that paid money. I take 3 hoop nets, put them in my one area. I take 4 hoop nets, put them in my other area. Then I'll take the last 2 hoop nets and I'll put them in a third area. And that's what we call, like they talk about it on Deadliest Catch, that's called prospecting. And we're trying to see where the lobsters are tonight because they're always moving. In your red hot, super hot spot, eventually won't be red hot, super hot spot. So you want to make sure that you're moving them around and you're keeping them in rotation. And when you find some lobsters, let's say you have 3 over here, 2 over there, and 4 over here. When you catch some in the 3, you might want to bring the 2 over there. I'm moving them around constantly. Whatever hoop net has the most lobsters, that's where I'm going to put the most hoop nets. But sometimes we don't catch any in all 3 of the spots. That's the way it is. Now we're on our way to find a new area to prospect. But you want to start pulling a half an hour after the sun goes down. You never want to go without 10 hoops either, because you're not going to go by yourself unless you're on a kayak. And like we always say, the guys that fish on kayaks only do it because they don't have a boat. Who wants to sit soaking wet in the water and hoop net? People without a boat. But if you're out on your boat, you take a friend, family member, kid, somebody, and make sure they have a lobster card too. Even if they don't want to have I don't want a lobster card. I'll tell you what, when they're crawling and your buddy doesn't have a card, he still can't get his limit. And you're going to be super bummed if you have to come in early because your buddy didn't have a lobster card. Buy him a damn lobster card. Get him a lobster card. Everybody on the boat should have a lobster card, regardless of if they're fishing or not. Because when they're crawling, you want as many as you can. At $49 a pound, and an average legal lobster is £1.25 pounds, you want as many as you can possibly get. Okay? So 10 hoop nets always. If you have to beg, borrow, steal, if you can't afford the rigid ones, if you want some flat nets, they're a little less expensive than the rigid ones, than the Eclipse style or the ones that are rigid. You can get the flat ones. Just make sure you have 10 in the water at all times because it's going to matter. When they're crawling, you can get your limit on your first set. But if you only have 5 or 6, you might not get your limit on the first set, and they might quit crawling by the time the second set comes. We've seen it many nights where they just stop crawling. Don't know why, but they just stopped. Seen them when they don't crawl at all. So those are very important. One thing I didn't talk about that's super important is bait. The most freshest bait you can have is the best bait to use. Why? Well, I talked to the biologist at the aquarium in Long Beach when Kelly caught her world record 18.75 pound lobsters. And what they told me was those big antennas that they have, Those are to pick up the electrical force coming off the bait when it starts to decompose or off of a fish. Every fish has an electrical force around them. And they're not real hip on the dead, rotting flesh. They're more about fresh. They'll go to the fresh bait before they'll go to the rotten bait. Don't get me wrong. I know you've all caught them on rotten bait, but they'll go to the fresh first. Then they'll go to the rotten second because they got to eat. But they want that fresh food. They want it as fresh as it can be. And once I learned that and I started to use fresh bait, I don't catch limits every time, but I'll tell you what, since we started using fresh bait, I have never been skunked. And before I started using fresh bait, I had gotten skunked. We had to figure this whole thing out on our own, though. There was nobody to give us a roadmap or any type of an idea of how this would work or anything. In 2005, I started hoop netting because I needed to feed my family. And that was the year of the yellowfin tuna. We were between Catalina and Clemente, and we were burning all the money we were making on fuel just to chase the yellowfin to catch some for our charter group. So when the season ended, we were standing there on the dock and we didn't know what to do because we had no money. So we started hooping out of necessity. And there was no roadmap. There was no one to teach us how to do it. We kind of figured it out on our own. I know I tell you all the time, don't do that. But in the beginning, we had to do that. We had to figure it out on our own. That was the only way we could do it, gang. And I wish there was a website like mine back then because I'd have been on it every night. I don't want to suck. The last thing I want to do when I'm fishing is suck. I never want to suck at fishing. So that's why my website makes it so you don't have to suck and all these things we're talking about. And the bait tubes, we talked about it last week on our show. The bait tubes are crucial because the sea lions are going to attack your bait as long as they can see it. That's why the bait cages are no bueno. If you have bait cages, give them to your friends that hoop net or give them to your enemies. But you should only be using the seal-proof bait tubes. And now Promar came out with the dark blue ones. I love those because those are really invisible underwater. Almost like the black ones I made by hand back in the day that you see in my videos. The blue ones are just like that. They're invisible underwater. Those pesky sea lions can't figure out where the food's at. They can smell it, but they can't see it. If they can't see it, they're not going to keep bugging your hoop net. So that's crucial to understand that. Now, how often do I pull my hoop nets is a big question I get asked all the time. When I start the rotation at half an hour after it gets dark, I'm going to go from 1 to 10, and I usually have 3 here, 4 here, and 2 over there. So I'm covering a little bit of area. So by the time I get back to my first net that I threw back in the water, it's already been in the water for a half an hour at least. Because I'm not just burning through them, all 10 of them in 10 minutes. I'm pulling them up, dumping the lobsters out, throwing the net back in the water, measuring the lobsters, go to the next hoop net, do the same thing. And if we're getting them, that's great. If we're not, we're moving nets around, trying to figure out where they've moved to. So all this is taking time. The longer they're in the water, the better the chance of those lobsters getting out. There's nothing to keep them in there but the food. So they're going to come in there, they're going to sniff around, and they're not going to be able to eat because you have a bait tube, so they can't get to the bait. So if you leave it down there for an hour and a half, lobsters went in and got out. I like half an hour, 45 minutes. That's what I like, because if you've ever thrown a lobster on the deck and watch how fast they crawl around there, they're super fast. So you want to make sure you're getting that full potential. So half an hour has been my number one thing. I never try to leave my nets down more than half an hour, 45 minutes. And then when we're really getting them, and sometimes the net will be down an hour. I don't like that, but it's just what happens because of the fact that we have so many lobsters we're catching and we're going through our gear. And remember, I'm doing it on a 65-foot Hatteras or a 65-foot Viking, so I'm not driving around super fast on little boat like you guys. Then the last thing I'm going to leave you with, and there's so much information you can gather up on our website, but any of you ever wrapped your hoop net in your propeller of your boat? I did a million times until I figured this out. And a lot of people don't agree with it. I don't really care. I'm just telling you what works for me, doing it every single day for 6 months, a year, for 10 years. And I was out there every day. As soon as I started to back down on these things, I never ever got a hoop net stuck in the propeller ever again. I never got the rope stuck in the propeller. What I do is I come in, I figure out which way the line is coming off the hoop net. I'll come right into the hoop net, back it in. As soon as I get it with my fish hook or my gaff, I tap the boat forward just so that it's not sliding back on the rope, and then we pull it off the back of the boat. When you're driving in on them forward, that last 5 seconds or that last 10 feet, you can't even see the hoop because of the flare of your bow. And that's when you get it caught in your propeller. So I had to think this thing through because I got tired of jumping in the water because I'm on a big yacht. And somebody had to go in and get the lines out of the propeller. And on the little boats, we had to pull the engine up, hang out over the side, unwrap it. I got tired of doing all that stuff. I started backing down on them, and now I've been backing down on them for 10 years at least. I've never caught a line in the propeller. If you watch our live hoop net trips with Justin, he does the same exact thing because he doesn't like to jump in the water and clear the lines. There's a lot of people that still drive forward on them, and I hear them all the time tell me, yeah, we got our line caught in the propeller again. I'm like, that's because you're doing it wrong. You don't have to do it wrong anymore, gang. I did it wrong for so long that you don't have to anymore. So hopefully this helps you out a little bit. Hopefully this points you in the right direction. If any of this information sounded interesting or sounded educated, check out our website at yoursaltwaterguide.com. You'll know every single lobster hole, cranny, from San Diego Bay up to the Channel Islands. We cover Catalina. We cover Long Beach, LA Harbor, San Diego Harbor. I got Captain Al Clowers fishing San Diego. You got Captain Pablo fishing Mission Bay. You got Captain Justin fishing Long Beach, LA, and Catalina. We have plenty of information at our website. So check out our website at yoursaltwaterguide.com. Get all the gear you need over at Promar Ahi USA, or use the QR code that's up on the screen. You're going to save 10% on all your gear. You're running out of time, gang. If you haven't pulled all your stuff out like we talked about last week and gone through it and see what you need and what you don't need, you're running out of time. Don't run out of time. Don't get caught with your pants down. Always be prepared. Always make sure you got enough of everything. Watch last week's video if you don't know what the heck I'm talking about. Gang, I'll be back. We're traveling all day tomorrow, the 18th, so we're not going to be doing a show tomorrow, but the 19th, we'll be live right here in the studio with all kinds of cool things to show you, cool videos, all kinds of great things to talk about our Alaska trip. Everybody over at Promar, thank you for all the support. All of you that watch the shows, thank you very, very much for all of your views and all of your comments. I appreciate it. If you have any questions about this lobster thing, we'll be right back to talking about it next week when I'm live here in studio. So have a great day. Turn off the news. They're all lying. This is the only place you get the truth, and I'll see y'all